This is GPS, the Global Public Square. Welcome to all of you in the United States and around the world. I'm Fareed Zakaria, and I got a terrific show for you today. Even though CNN told me to reduce my show to 8 minutes. It's heartbreaking, really. Our show stops at two places around the globe. We start with what I believe is one of the most controversial court cases today, McCutcheon versus FEC. And then we will move on to look at Brazil as they prepare to host the World Cup and the 2016 Olympic Games. Anyway, let's get started. McCutcheon versus FEC. The Supreme Court case took away aggregate limits on individual donations in the electoral process. Let me explain what that means. So before this decision, an individual can only directly donate $46,200 to different politicians' campaigns, but now they could effectively spend as much money as they want to in direct donations. However, it is important to note that each individual candidate can still only receive $2,500 from any one donor. The difference now is that donors can directly support as many candidates as they please. Now my own thoughts. I recently wrote a commentary in the Columbus Dispatch about the role of money in politics, noting that, compared with other democracies, the United States has become not just an outlier, but practically another planet. The total cost of the 2010 elections in Britain was only $86 million, while the total cost of the 2012 elections, US elections, has been estimated to be nearly 75 times that number at $6.3 billion. On top of that, Lawrence Lessig from Harvard has pointed out that members of Congress spend 3 out of every 5 workdays raising money. Joining me today, I am Michael Waldman, president of the Brennan Center for Justice, who's against this decision. Welcome to the show, Michael.
Hello, Fareed. Good to see you.
So, Michael, your organization is very opposed to this decision. Why is that?
Well, McCutcheon is one of many recent cases that has once again served to expand the influence of money in politics and is, quite frankly, an insult to our democracy. Starting with Buckley v. Vallejo in the 70s and much more recently Citizens United, this Supreme Court has opened the floodgates for money to corrode our political process. You see, Fareed, the only people who are able to take advantage of the nearly limitless election finance laws we have in place now are the super wealthy who can actually afford to. For example, according to the U.S. Public Interest Research Group, 94% of super PAC donations were made by only 0.0004% of the population. That's enough people to fit in a high school gym. This completely unequal representation has real tangible effects, Fareed. In fact, Martin Gillens of Princeton University recently published a study which concluded that the preferences of the average American appear to have a minuscule, nearly zero, statistically non-significant impact on public policy, while the preferences of the economic elite have far greater impacts on policy. And as of late, the American people have been catching on to this trend and losing faith in our democracy itself. A recent Washington Post poll found that 80% of Americans oppose the McCutcheon decision, and another poll by Reuters found that roughly 3/4 of Americans believe that there is too much money in politics and that the rich have a disproportionate influence because of this. Fareed, the American people are losing faith in our democracy itself. So to say the very least, I am deeply disappointed in the court's decision in McCutcheon.
Well, thank you, Michael, but not everybody would agree with you. Joining us now we have Dan Backer, the attorney who first persuaded Mr. McCutcheon to bring his case to the Supreme Court and a firm supporter of the court's decision. Hello, Dan.
Hello, Fareed. It's a pleasure to be here today.
So, Dan, why in your opinion is this decision beneficial to our country?
Well, Fareed, it's a simple matter of upholding and expanding free speech. I believe the decision was very good for our great country, and the argument for this reason is a very simple idea and concept. Remember that any one individual can still only give $2,500 to any one candidate. The idea that giving such a small amount of money would influence a candidate is completely ludicrous. That is too small of an amount to even make a candidate notice one individual in the billion-dollar election cycle. There is no reason to limit the number of candidates that an individual should be able to support. In fact, it's better to be able to support many candidates because it allows for every candidate to receive support, and thus, everyone's views can be represented. Aggregate limits completely restricts our right to free speech as a citizen of the United States by limiting our ability to support as many candidates as we wish to see succeed. Now, Fareed, there is no reason
Dan,
to...
that's all the time we
Fareed,
had.
there is no reason to limit our right to free speech.
He is the most interesting man in the world.
I don't always drink beer, but when I do, I prefer Dos Equis. Stay thirsty, my friends.
Now for our What in the World segment. Brazil, who's been a major economic power in South America in recent years, is hosting the 2014 World Cup and 2016 Olympic Games, which has 2 weeks left to kick off the World Cup. Brazil has been rocked with protests and violence, and is considered severely underprepared by many standards. I recently wrote an article about Brazil and the CNN World about the fate of the World Cup, noting that Brazilia's public spending has been downright wasteful. And it's not just the bloated World Cup investments, totaling an estimated $11.6 billion. According to the Federation of Industries of Sao Paulo State, corruption cost the country up to $53 billion in 2013 alone. Will Brazil be qualified hosts? We'll find out soon in a table discussion with the president of FIFA, Joseph Blatter, and former Brazil superstar, Ronaldinho. But first, let's go on the ground with our Brazil correspondent, Rafael Romo. Welcome to the show, Rafael. How is it in Brazil right now?
Hey Fareed, I'm standing here in Sao Paulo, the city that will host the first game of the World Cup. Things here have been pretty hectic. For starters, Brazil has had serious protest troubles. Recently, record levels of protesters, over 1 million to be specific, took to the streets to criticize government corruption and state spending on the World Cup stadiums. The protesters want the government to spend its money on healthcare and in education in place of the World Cup. In fact, even the world-renowned soccer player Pelé has said that Brazil should spend less money on the World Cup in exchange for helping its own people. Sadly, 6 people have already died due to these protests, and it is likely that more will follow, since the Brazilian government expects much more violence. Just recently, it spent $22 million over 75,000 non-lethal weapons, including 50,000 canisters of pepper spray and devices ranging from rubber bullets to smoke grenades, so that it can maintain order on the streets. Inflation is soaring, and businesses have been compensating by raising prices, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. There's a serious threat of violence here currently. Gang violence has been running rampant in recent years, and the government has essentially failed at covering this up. A recent Reuters article reports that gangs, mostly made up of drug traffickers, have gone as far as knocking down power lines, which have put many cities in the dark and made construction for Brazil's upcoming games increasingly more challenging. I was talking with Tanya Igina, a Nigerian sports journalist, and during the official test of the stadium last Sunday, only 40,000 tickets were put on sale for Corinthians' match against Figueirense because some of the 20,000 temporary seats needed for the World Cup opener were still being installed. Officials have admitted that a portion of the roof won't be completed until after the World Cup, which ends on July 13th. Fareed, this could potentially be the first unsuccessful World Cup in the history if Brazil is unable to speed up construction and put an end to these protests.
Thank you, Rafael. That was a great perspective on the situation in Brazil. We'll be right back with our table discussion about Brazil, so stay with us.
Fareed Zakaria GPS, seen in Sunday morning 10 Eastern and Pacific.
We'll now move on to our table discussion. I have 2 great guests with me today. First, we have Joseph Blatter, the president of FIFA, and Ronaldinho, former superstar for Brazil's national team. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Pleasure.
So, my first question for you two would be, is Brazil ready to host the World Cup?
Well, they're not exactly on track with our strict schedule we have, and I can tell you that from an inside perspective. But when you look at the bigger picture here, they're still going to have the first game on the date they said they wanted to. They haven't been able to sell all the tickets, but it will happen. So, are they ready? Yes, but not as ready as they could be.
Well, I would actually have to disagree with you, Joseph. I believe that Brazil is not ready to host the games in the World Cup tournament. Coming from myself, I live in this country and I know that we are not up to par with how the World Cup usually takes place. The World Cup is usually done months before and ahead of time, but this time they are not even on schedule. They're not going to even be finished constructing the buildings until after the World Cup is over.
So you think it was a mistake for Brazil to host the World Cup then?
I do believe in a sense that it was a mistake for Brazil to host the World Cup. Obviously, it is very good for the country itself, but if they cannot get the deadlines made, then I don't think that they should be able to host the World Cup.
Why do you think Brazil wants to host the 2014 World Cup and 2016 Summer Games?
Well, I think it's a simple matter of trying to get their name out there. That's kind of why we picked Brazil to begin with. We wanted them to be a new face on the international world, and it's a great thing to have different countries hosting these games. So they basically want to show that they're a developed nation now, that they're willing to basically take on this big task.
Well, I would sort of agree with what Joseph has said, and I also believe that Brazil has a very strong sense of national pride. Just living inside of the country, I can feel that everyone has this very good vibe to themselves. They believe that Brazil is a great country, and if you look around the region of South America, Brazil is the most politically and economically advanced country in the area. So I do believe that it's a sense of national pride.
Thank you, gentlemen. It's a pleasure to have you two.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning into this week's Global Public Square. I hope you enjoyed the show, even though CNN kicked me out of my other recording studio. We'll see you back here next week.
Hey, it's over 8 minutes! Someone get Fareed out of there!
Welcome to the show, Michael.
Maybe not that long.
So, Michael, your organization is very opposed to this decision. Nobody likes it. Why is that?
Organization. Nasty. You can see the bottom of the tie. Undo that.
Look, I'm not gonna.
Hello, Fareed. Good to see you.
So, Michael, I forgot to pause. I recently wrote an article. I was doing good. That was like my best take, okay? I recently wrote an article about Brazil in the. Start again. I recently wrote an article about Brazil in CNN World about the fate of. I don't know. Start again. Paula State. Corruption cost the company. Keep saying. Oh my God. Start again. I said corruption cost the country.
You want me to highlight that?
Start recording.
I did.
It's not recording.
Yes.
Red light's not on.
It says rec. Is there a red light now?
No.
Where's the red light?
Does it say anything on the camera
Yeah,
wall?
there's a red light.
Oh. The whole world revolves around you, doesn't it?
I was talking with Tana. Your tie looks stupid.
What? Welcome to the show, Raphael. How is it in...
Second, yeah, give me a second. Alright. I go against the wall, and I'm still moving. The cord's like, and then you like just start talking.
Okay,
It'll look weird if the cord's not.
I'm sorry.
Down power lines, which have put many cities in the dark and made construction for Brazil's upcoming games increasingly more challenging.
Construction?
I was like, construction.
Even though CNN told me to reduce my show to 8 minutes. Our show stops. Yeah, make it go faster. It can't be a billion. While the cost of the 2010-12 elections in the
Hello, Fareed. It's a pleasure to be here today.
I forgot to pause.
Fareed, there's no reason to limit the right of
Cut to the
free speech.
commercial. This is Fareed Zakaria. Now, kids, be sure to go home and study for finals now. When quoting something from the post-American world, remember to quote exactly what I said. Thank you, and good luck. At the political military level, we remain in a single superpower world, but in all other dimensions. Industrial, financial, educational, social, cultural, the distribution of power is shifting, moving away from American dominance. That does not mean we are entering an anti-American world, but we are moving into a post-American world, one defined and directed from many places and by many people. The word of Fareed.
Thanks be to Fareed. All hail Fareed. All hail Fareed. hail Fareed! All hail Fareed!